How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and we actually have some brand new Starfield details, including some new gameplay footage, a couple seconds that detail the dialogue system, the persuasion system. We learn about how fuel works in Starfield and some changes that have been made during development to the fuel system in the game, and other Starfield details as well. This is an official gameplay interview, or just an official interview with Todd Howard, and I am so excited. I previously thought that we weren't going to see anything Starfield related until the Game Awards. That was my prediction, and I am so incredibly happy to be proven wrong, because this is great, and this is an awesome way to keep the community engaged with some new information and some new details until Bethesda is ready to talk official marketing materials such as new trailers and new footage about Starfield. So for now, if you're not subscribed to Constellation, you should go ahead and do so, because that's how everybody found out about this new interview. In fact, it's still unlisted on Bethesda Softworks' official YouTube channel, so you definitely want to be subscribed to their newsletter if you want early access to some of these new Constellation question videos that are coming out. It's possible they might not ever publicly list it. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to wait and see. But this is the first video in a series of question and answer related videos tied to Starfield, and you can actually submit your own. If you're not a member of Constellation, you can go ahead and type on social media with the hashtag Starfield questions, and it might get picked up. And if you are a member of Constellation, you can actually go to their Discord and submit questions there, which is pretty cool. I'm glad that they're engaging the community in this way, because there's definitely a lot of questions surrounding what Starfield is, what we can expect. I even have a whole video of some of the biggest questions remaining regarding the game. You can check that out if you're interested. Now, first things first, Todd Howard talks about inspirations for Starfield, and he mentions the game Sundog Frozen Legacy in particular, which is interesting because we can actually see some of the correlations, some of the inspirations already based on information we know about Starfield. So if you go ahead and look at the Sundog Frozen Legacy Wikipedia page, the plot of the game begins with the player assuming the role of Zed, a young man who has been enslaved in the glass mines his entire life. And as we've seen from Starfield gameplay footage, you actually begin the game in this mining section, this mining colony, until you eventually discover an artifact that sets you free. It gains the interest of stronger powers that be that allow you to join Constellation and further your adventure. So there's already some comparisons there, and it's interesting to see what else we might be able to pick out by looking at what Sundog has to offer. The other inspiration was a game called Traveler, which is a pen and paper RPG that was around the time that D&D was getting popular. I didn't spend as much time looking into Traveler because it is a massive RPG, but you can go ahead and check it out. Might be cool for some of you, especially if you like old school tabletop RPGs. The next question asked in this interview is whether or not Starfield is hard sci-fi, and I don't think Todd Howard could have answered this question any better. He does actually say that at the end of the day, hard sci-fi, people will have different interpretations of the meaning, but Bethesda needs to make sure that Starfield is a fun game first and foremost. So they need to take some liberties and gamify some elements in order to make it fun for the player. And I could not agree more. I'm all for having a realistic hardcore experience, but if it compromises or it gets in the way of me having fun with a video game, it's not worth my time. So right answer there, Todd Howard. They specifically allude to the way that the fuel system works and how it's evolved over time. We've actually talked about something like this here on the channel, which is the possibility of running out of fuel in your spaceship. What happens if you just get stranded out in space? Because Bethesda had spent a lot of time talking about the importance of helium-3, so we thought it would play a little bit more weight in the game. Turns out that was how it worked at one point, but Bethesda has since shifted their focus in order to make it so that fuel only affects how far you can grab jump in the game, your total jumping distance, because what they found through playtesting was that if you did run out of fuel in space, it would just simply get boring. You were just stuck there. The game stopped completely. You didn't have anything to do. Now, interestingly enough, he actually did encourage in some way a mod maker to come and fix or change this feature or add it back into the game. I already see the comments of people saying, oh, Bethesda just wants modders to fix that game. And I couldn't disagree more with that statement, at least with this specific example, simply because it's not the direction that Bethesda wanted to take the game in. That's their ultimate final creative decision, is to make it where fuel only affects grab jumping. If somebody wants to add it in as a mod, that's great, but that's not fans fixing the game for them. I feel like this is a discussion that was going to come up, so I had to address it. Maybe Bethesda saves it for a future update for a more hardcore experience. Maybe modders put it into the game. One of the things I've always respected about Todd Howard is his ability to look at some of these things very objectively and say, no, we don't need that, and take it out of the game or add things into the game that should be there. I think he does a fantastic job in that department, and this is one example of that. Next up was traits, which I'm glad that they showcased more traits, because this was probably one of the aspects I think a lot of fans are most excited for, since it does harken back to some of the older Bethesda RPGs, and we actually see some interesting ones here. They each come with their own positive and negatives, such as empath that was shown off, where if you perform actions that your companions like, they get temporary boosts. If you do things they don't like, they get temporary negatives. I love that. Alien DNA is one that a lot of people were curious about, and now we finally know what it is, where you're part of a controversial experiment that combines alien human DNA. It's still not sentient aliens, it's worth mentioning. It's just alien life, but now you have higher health and you have greater endurance, but your healing items don't do as much. Probably one I might actually look into. I like those kinds of trade-offs. Dream Home starts you off with a player home, but you have to pay off a mortgage. Don't know if that one I'll go for, considering I will just end up building my own house anyway, so not sure, but there you go. There is the extrovert trait, which is interesting. It specifies if you're traveling with human companions. We have to keep in mind there are companions like Fasco who are not human, so it's not necessarily meaning alien companions. It's not confirmed at all. However, if you're traveling with human companions, you have more oxygen, which as far as we know is basically just your stamina meter if you try to sprint or do any of those types of functions. One of the reasons I love the trait system so much is exemplified through this one here, Freestar Collective Settler, where if you want to start off the game aligned with the Freestar Collective, you actually get some unique dialogue options and better rewards from their quests, but other factions, you'll have higher bounties. If you go off and piss them off, the bounties are more severe. So we already kind of knew this, but we do actually get some written confirmation that there's separate bounty systems for each faction. That's kind of cool. Again, it was more or less a given, but it's nice to see it here on the screen. But I love these kinds of traits because it really helps you to delineate what type of character you want to be, really helps you get in the role-playing headspace, really helps you to define exactly what your character is and put them down a specific type, a specific build right from the get-go, and I really do love that. And I think one that most people are probably very interested in, probably will take it for one of their first playthroughs, maybe their second playthroughs, is Hero Warships, which brings the adoring fan back from Oblivion.
By Azura, by Azura, by Azura! It's the Grand Champion! I can't believe it's you standing here next to me.
Especially if you're traveling through space and you're on a random planet, is he just gonna pop up and be like, hello, adventurer? You know, that kind of thing. I can't wait to see what the adoring fan has in store. Don't know if it's a first playthrough kind of perk, but it's a funny reference at the least. Also, what's interesting is that you'll actually be able to remove some of these traits. If you don't like them, there's a quest or an activity that you can do in the game that will get rid of them. Not certain if you can get new ones instead to replace them, although I would actually like that quite a bit. But effectively, this allows you to not have to start a brand new character to try a different trait, or if you do try something and you really hate it, you can have a way to get rid of it. That's pretty nice. I like that. Bethesda definitely saved the best, the most juicy bits for last, and so I had to do the same, which is the way the dialogue system works, and actually the amount of dialogue lines in the game. Todd Howard confirmed that Starfield has officially crossed over 250,000 lines of dialogue, which is more than Fallout 4 and Skyrim combined, which is absolutely ludicrous, especially when you consider that Fallout 4 had a voice protagonist, Starfield does not. So all of those voice lines are dedicated towards just NPCs and their reactions and responses to what the player says. And this is awesome, not only because it means that we'll get a wide net of how NPCs will react to you, which we know Todd Howard has put a lot of emphasis on, trying to make those interactions as believable as possible. Howard explains that naturally there's an increase to the amount of content in the game from quests and interactions, that kind of thing, but he mentioned specifically the depth of some of these features is extensively more, and I think that the amount of dialogue in the game really highlights that, just how diverse your conversations can be with NPCs, which is exciting because I won't have the same experience that you do, and that's important when you're playing a role-playing game. You want to feel like you have some really important influence on the world around you, and dialogue is one such way to do that. Especially I could see a situation option for a trait like Freestar Settler. If you pick that one for your first playthrough and then you decide, oh wait, I actually don't really like the Freestar, I want to go with the United Colonies, if there's a way to remove that trait, it should be present. So for some of these, it really does make sense. I guess for the Adoring Fan, you just shoot them a couple times and that'll take care of that problem. So there's probably some more unique ways to take care of some of these.
Well, I'll be hanging around the arena grounds if you need someone to worship the ground you walk on. Bye.
One of the items I'm most excited to talk about today is the persuasion system in Starfield, because we can actually piece together exactly how the entirety of it works just from a few short seconds of gameplay. I really was curious about this one ever since they brought up the Oblivion persuasion system and how they were modernizing that, and finally we have our answers. So if you take a look at clips and some of the footage that we got recently, you can see that there's a series of points next to each dialogue option. On the bottom you have a persuasion meter and you have a set amount of turns in order to persuade a particular NPC. The minimum requirement in order to persuade this NPC in particular is 4 points, and you'll see that next to each of the points is a color coding. This probably dictates the difficulty of the persuasion check. So you can absolutely go right off the bat for the +5, but that is a difficult persuasion check. There's a chance you'll fail it. However, you'll notice the turns meter, which implies the fact that you won't just fail a persuasion check the first time you mess something up. You'll actually have multiple chances in order to persuade a particular NPC, hence the point system. I think this is an incredibly interesting way to do it, especially because you can't just fail the first time. I really do like that. But you can try to go for the easy options first, where you get just +1/+1, and then you realize you have 1 turn left, you're going to need to go for a more difficult dialogue option. Alternatively, you can try to risk it early on, go for the hardest dialogue option, see if you pass or fail, and then try to do things a bit more conservatively based on how many turns that you have remaining. It's pretty unique, pretty different. Nothing that I've seen before for a persuasion system, so good on Bethesda for innovating in that department. There is also an auto-persuade system. This is one that I'm not 100% sure on. I'm guessing that maybe you just kind of hold down the button based on the amount of the auto-persuade, which it does fill up based on how many points you are. It might be more difficult, like you might have less of a chance to persuade them if you try to do the whole thing. If you go through some of the options, it might make it a little bit easier because you have less of the bar to fill. So I'm pretty curious how that might play out, but there is an option to kind of skip this minigame, which I know a lot of folks don't like minigames in Bethesda games. I will say though, as far as naturally weaving a minigame type system into the gameplay, they did a fantastic job. So lots of really great information from this interview, from this small little 4-minute video, tons of cool details, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of these types of videos, especially because we were just talking about how it's been a complete dry spell for Bethesda, and I'm looking forward to seeing what cadence these come out in, since it's sort of seemingly replacing the Into the Starfield videos that we were getting previously. I think it's a great tactic for Bethesda to keep interest in the game, and it's cool that they're actually listening and taking some feedback from their community. I would love to see it if they actually stated where the questions come from and who they're taking it from, because then you could actually see if you got featured in one of these videos. It'd be pretty neat. That's all for today though. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.